Hi, my name is Grobler Basson. I'm an ultra runner from Cape Town, South Africa.
And I'm Gabriel Creel. Used to be an ultra runner. I'm a dune runner now. You can like cut, you can cut it, just cut it. We just had this little surprise from Grobler in here. Put some rock in there. Extra weight.
So we're at the start.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling good. I think I'm not really sure what to expect in terms of our first, say, 20-30 kilometers. I think it's going to be interesting first day.
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
No, good. I think it's you know, the butterflies are there, so it's an exciting day. We're looking forward to a long, hard day. I'm looking forward to a raw element of it, and yeah, good.
Yeah, hopefully the sun comes up.
Kijk, dit is hy. Daar's die lyn. Dit is presies omtrent 47,5 minute na 6. Maandagoggend gaan ons. Cheers julle. Cheers julle. Sien julle later.
To run across the Namib desert has been a dream of mine for the last couple of years. I think people sometimes ask why do you do something like this? And I think the best way to answer that would be with another question is, have you ridden in a car past a nice landscape, past like a beautiful mountain range, and you always wonder what's on the next crest, what's behind the next the mountain? And you know, I was privileged enough to experience the desert a couple of years ago, albeit in a 4x4, and I thought, yes man, we must run across this.
K, 5 hours. It's been a mix of this like grass, sandy. Then when you hit the dunes, you can feel like it stands loose. And we had a little bit of the canyon, so it's changing. You can see it's changing. I think the next section is going to be a bit more rocky. Okay, kop op, is mooi gegeven. Ja. Ja, wat dan weer? Wat zie je met dat?
Zo vroeg in die game.
At this start, he hung up his little pack, and you never leave your pack alone. You never do that. So we found this rock, put it in. I found it, I gave it to him. It's a present, and now he's just throwing it on the ground. After 40 k's, he throws it on the ground.
The idea was to traverse the desert from on the widest path, so from east to west, start in inland and then run to the coast as the crow flies. So we looked at maps, we looked at like good Google images to see, you know, how we'll approach this, because you get these dunes and then you get these what they call streets or valleys, and then these dunes again, and closer to the ocean the dunes become sort of a little bit, there's no structure, so we were not quite sure how to approach this. Also in terms of planning the elevation gain, how long it's going to take us. So we obviously consulted, you know, some of the local guys and see, you know, what roughly idea of distance we can cover on foot per day, what would be reasonable, what can we expect, and then we sort of took it from there. I think at the end of the day what we did is we literally pinpointed a mark on the coast, which was the Edward Bolen shipwreck, and we tried to stick to that line as best as possible.
The Namib is or the Namib desert, shall I say, is a product, of course, of soil erosion, and the channel that feeds this entire desert is basically the Orange River that we have in the south. So we have the Fish River Canyon, which is also a product of soil erosion, etc., etc., the sand gets transferred through the river into the Atlantic. Then in the Atlantic Ocean we have the Benguela current that starts in the South Pole and it flows north towards Angola. So this sand will then make its whole journey through the ocean. It will end up on the beaches and then the wind blows it inland. So this entire process is repetitive and it's happening as we speak. Some of the sand you can trace as far back as the Drakensberg in South Africa. But if you go look at the desert itself, in total, the Naukluft, which basically encompasses the whole Namib desert as such, in total is about 48,000 square kilometers. It's by far not the biggest or anything, but it is the oldest desert. This was the first one on Earth that started. You'll also notice the color variations in the dunes themselves. So one of the key elements that we find in the sand is called magnetite. So it's an iron oxide, and that's all this sort of black powder that you see in the sand and all these little black particles. So if you have a look at the desert, it's basically like a triangle. So we'll have Lüderitz in the south, we'll have Walvis Bay in the north, and then this corner would be Sossusvlei. So Sossusvlei is the oldest part of the desert because that's where everything started. There was essentially two river systems that came down through Central Africa, and this river got to Sossusvlei. Right now the one section split down to the south, which is part of the Tsaugap river system, and the other one basically went directly west, which is the Kuiset river that we know today. Back then there was no desert here, so if we look at ground zero, day one, this immense amount of sand that started arriving through the Atlantic was blown inland, and it got to these two river systems. And subsequently, it couldn't jump across the rivers, so it started to accumulate on the river banks, and that was literally your first line of dunes.
You will run across like a massive dune, and well, run is a strong word, like crawl across this massive dune, and you will come to this valley and you look around you and it's like this unbelievable big landscape, and you're this tiny dot in it, and you may be a handful of human beings in like the size of Belgium. Then it sort of hits you, this vastness, and I mean you're so vulnerable. A few hours without water, then you're gonna be in trouble. So I mean that's one thing that sort of that hit me, is like we are actually so insignificant in this whole thing, yet we have this endurance spirit, if I can call it that, where one wants to experience these situations where you feel most alive, and it often comes in a place where you are, in a vast place, being vulnerable, experiencing like fatigue, and trying to do something which is questionable. But I mean, lying in bed and lying in the tents at night, you just feel like you're at the right place. You feel like you are where you're supposed to be, because I think that is something that is in our DNA, is to go out there and explore whatever place it is for you know, for each person. For us this time it was the desert, and next time it's maybe big mountain somewhere, which I think we are more accustomed to.
The color variations, you know, isn't indicative of the age. So because Sossusvlei is roughly about 200,000 years older than the dunes we have along the coast, this magnetite has had a chance to oxidize or rust is the best way to put it. So if you were to drag a magnet through the sand in Sossusvlei, it'll look like the magnet is covered in particles of rust, whereas if you do it here, it'll actually be this black powder, and that clearly shows you the difference. In effect, the sand is actually exactly the same color. It's just these billions of little particles, you know, that gives you the illusion that the dunes has this red color to it. As I said earlier, you know, the Namib itself falls under the protection of the World Heritage Foundation, which is a global entity that everybody knows, and essentially what it does is it protects special places on earth for future prosperity. So in our case, for the Namib itself being classified as a World Heritage Site, or the #1 World Heritage Site, and also undescribed by UNESCO, it basically limits or eradicates future developments, you know, hotels being built or airports being put up or stadiums or anything like that, for future generations. Because you guys saw for yourself, you know, it is a special place and it does need this protection, especially in today's society, you know, with everyone chasing money and trying to develop things. And I mean, we've heard it often now, people want to exploit, shall we say, this area. So it is heavily monitored. It works on a permit system. I'm sure you've seen, you know, the privileges that we have to operate in this area is immense, and hence we take good care of it. You know, simple silly little things like not to make fires out in the open and leave coals behind, because it takes hundreds of years, you know, for that to disappear. Picking up after oneself, you know, not littering in the areas, any toilet paper, these things that will get burned, and it's, you know, the results speak for themselves. You guys ran through the desert now, and you know, one of the few places I think where you can still feel the nature. You know, there's not a lot of interruption by man as such.
Obviously, this is my first time running through the desert, and the one thing that I wasn't expecting was the life form in the desert. So where we have, you know, I was imagining this desert to be this very dry, and it is very dry, but desolated place with no life form. We found so much life out there in the desert, and it was amazing to see how, you know, the little creatures in the desert, the plants, the antelope, all of those, you know, animals were surviving and enduring every single day in the desert, through this heat and through this just dryness, and it made me think about what, you know, the way we operate in life, being ultra trail runners, but not just that, but just in life in general. You know, we like constantly just enduring the pressures of life, you know, the work environments, the family responsibilities, and you continuously like going through this endurance race in your life, where in the desert you would expect it just to be this very like desolated place, and you can almost just relax from that, where you can actually pick up that nature in itself and animals in itself is also doing this. They're also enduring, you know, just the same way as we are. Day in and day out, these animals that I don't even think would exist there are living there and just thriving on a little bit of dew that comes in the morning, or you know, the little bit of mist rain that will come in. And that was great to see, just to feel that and to kind of resonate with that. And you know, running through that, you could actually like almost get encouraged by that, you know, get power from that to encourage you to go further, because you see that it's not just the human race that's enduring, but it's, you know, it's the way the world is created. You know, Earth is created to endure, it's created to reproduce, it's created to always produce life, regardless of the situation and regardless of the environment that it's in. It'll always produce life.